So I decided I'd go ahead and steal this from the website, the Oracle website, this array demo. So I just copied and pasted it into a new Meetings project. You can find this website again. This is in the supplemental resources. And I think I'll just leave it week 12. I'll put it in week 13 because the other week's 11, 12. So this will be in week 13, supplemental resources. So just go to this link and download the code, copy, paste. There's a download link, or you can copy and paste it. And when you run it, this is what happens. So it's just telling you what we have is an array of integers, and it's telling us what each element is at each index. So index 0, we have the element 100, the integer 100. At index 1, we have the integer 200. Note that the first element's 100 is at index 0. I'm going to keep repeating this, right? The second element is 200. It's at index 1, and so on. The 10th element is 1000. It's at index 9. There is no index 10. So let's look at the code. Talk about the syntax here. So the syntax, make this bigger. This declaration and allocation of memory is in two parts. I quibble a little bit with the terminology here. They may be right, or maybe I'm right. I don't know which one, but it declares an array of integers. I'd say it doesn't declare an array. It declares a variable that can hold the reference to an array of integers. The array of integers itself is this right here. So the way you create an array of integers is using the syntax new, just like a class, because it really is a sort of special kind of object in Java. The data type of the array. So in this case, we're storing an array of integers, just like an array of colors before, right? In this case, it's an array of integers. So you use the int keyword. And then how many integers you want to maximally store, right? What's the limit? How big is this bucket? It's a bucket the size of 10 integers. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10 integers. Index starting at 0 through 9. So what you'll see here is this declares the variable. Notice it's int, the data type of the array that you want the variable to hold the reference of, and then just empty square brackets. The spacing can vary here. Sometimes there's space around this. Sometimes I think you can even put it, I can't remember in Java if you can do this, but maybe after, I always do it this way. Maybe you can put it after the name. I can't remember. But in any case, the square brackets are required because what the data type is a variable of type integer array. That's different from just integer. An integer is one whole number at a time. An array of integers could be any number starting at 0, but going through however many you make it, however big you make it. So this combines both, it doesn't combine it. It splits up two steps that are usually kind of combined. You'll often see arrays declared this way. Not 100% of the time. Sometimes you might want to do it a little differently. I like to have it here. There's different reasons, different scenarios where you might split it up. But let's do this on 2 lines here. This is the way you'd like to typically see it. You combine the two together into one statement. So this declares the variable of type integer array, and the name of the variable is an array. It is a variable. It's just a variable that can be indexed. It's not just a simple variable. It's kind of 10 variables at once in this case. 10 integers, I'm sorry. 10 integers at once. It's one variable that points to 10 integers. And the way you get at each one of those integer elements, again, keep in mind that the value you store is called an element, the element in the array. So 100 is the element here. This is also an element. You can call this an element. When you take the name of the array plus a specific subscript, that's an element of the array. In this case, we're assigning 100 to the first element. So 100 becomes the first element. And then the second element. Again, this is really the element here. This is the value you're assigning to the element. And notice again the terminology here, this is called a subscript. The subscript for index 0 in the array. remember, the indexes and the elements, they're talking about the structure, the logical structure of the array, the way you should think about it, the conceptual, how you should conceptualize it. The syntax you use to get at each element in the array is by using a subscript. So brackets, square brackets after the name of the variable for the array, plus the number of the index you want to access. So the first element is at index 0, so we use the subscript, square brackets 0. There's a subtle difference between subscript and index, is what I want you to do. Most people use them interchangeably, honestly, but you should know the difference. The subscript, you can't actually write the number below the variable name in your code because there's not really half lines, right? You can't go down half a line, so you put it in square brackets to symbolize that it's a subscript. And so forth, so you do all of it. Now here's the thing I want you to notice. They don't put this error in here, but I want you to see it right off. This will give you an error. Don't think it does it at compile time. If it did, it would show up here. But at runtime, it will give you an error, and this is the error. Whenever you see this, array index out of bounds exception, this means usually one of two things. Either your index somehow went below 0 into the negatives, which happens every now and then, depending on if you're decrementing something maybe, or it goes, more often usually, it goes off the other end, out past the end of the array. You can't do that because remember the arrays are fixed in size. This array is size 10. You can have 10 integers, index 0 through 9. So you can't have an index 10 because that's really the 11th element. Just keep track. Write it out if you need to. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10 things. You can't have an 11th. So don't do this, what I just did. And again, you don't usually do it explicitly like this by having an actual number here. The thing you need to realize is that you can also put variables in here as a subscript, or even expressions. The only qualification is that they have to resolve, they have to evaluate to an integer that's within the bounds of the array. So just a real quick example. This is probably not a good idea to do right now, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Int I gets, let's say, 0. So if I go down here and say an array sub I plus 2 gets 333, what does that mean? It means I was 0, 1, 2, so it's index 2. It should mean the third element becomes 333. So instead of 300, I guess, let's run it and see what we get. 333 at index 2. So you can do things like this. This should give you a hint about loops. And that might be the next thing I show, I'm not sure. But anyway, notice the syntax, both for assigning 700 to the element number 7, index 6. This is how you do an assignment. And then if you want to print it out, you just put it in the proper place to print it out. So I want to print out the first element, the element at an array sub 0. So that's kind of it's already 8.5 minutes. That's kind of a quick overview of like the basic syntax of how to use an array. So declaring an array variable, creating a space for the array in memory, and then like working with the subscripts to assign elements to it and then print the elements out. Just download this code from Oracle and kind of mess around with it until it makes sense.